Week 4 in a month filled with vibrant colors that are coming all from wood. Hi, this is Margaret Byrd and welcome to Color Quest. So far in the month of July, we have looked at 3 different woods or woody substances that have brought us some fairly vibrant colors. So far, we've seen some pinks and purples coming from sapwood, some vibrant yellows coming from osage, and last week we welcomed some fiery reds and oranges into our dye studio with the help of madder root. Now, all of these colors we've been shifting as well, so we've been seeing how far we can push these already gorgeous colors. This week on Color Quest, we're going to be looking at one more wood and a completely different color, and that is purple in the form of logwood. Join me as we see what this last wood of July is going to bring us in the way of natural color. So logwood is not new to us here at Color Quest. I've actually had 2 videos where we looked at it. One was using it to create a natural black, and it was one of a series of dyes and processes that were combined in order to make a beautiful black color. Very important, as this is not a color easily found or achieved with natural colors in general. The other video was of a kit that I looked at together with you from Julie Sinden at The Love of Color. And this actually would be a great kit to tag along with this whole month where we looked at woods, because in that kit you will get samples of logwood as well as 2 of the other woods that we looked at so far, and that is madder root. Although in the kit it comes as a powdered, ground down version as opposed to the roots themselves, and the osage orange. So you can go back and look at those videos, and maybe if you're interested in trying these different woods out, that might be a great place to go to test them out. So today though, I just want to look at logwood. And like we've done in the last few videos, we're going to manipulate it. One is we're going to look at 2 different extraction percentages. So we'll look at a 10% and a 100% weight of fiber. We will also be checking on a shift, but this time as it connects to the kind of fiber that we use. So I'm going to introduce silk and wool into the mix today, because those should react potentially differently to a soda ash shift or an alkaline shift. And then finally, we will go ahead and just do a straight iron shift on these and see what kind of purple that brings. So we will run a series of tests all in the name of natural color, and start, as we do with wood products, by doing a soak. Before we do that, however, guess what? We have to weigh our fiber. So let's first work with the percentages based upon the weight of the fiber. And we're going to look at 10% and 100%. And that is because there can be a wide range of color strengths that come from logwood. So I'm curious to see what a difference will be between 10 and 100% weight of fiber. Now, I don't have very heavy fiber. We'll see how that goes in terms of what my scale is able to capture with weight. I might have to invest in a more precision scale at some point, but let's go ahead and weigh this and see what we got. So since I'm weighing just some very light fibers, I'm trying to get to a number that's going to be easy to do the math. So I have 11 grams here, and for this stack I have 11 grams as well. I was trying to get to 10. That's the way it goes. You know my scale. There we go. Thank you. Anyway, so for this first stack, we're going to be looking at 10% weight of fiber. And so there's no math mistakes. We have 10 grams times 10%, which means we're going to have 1 gram of logwood chips for the 10% version. And then of course, if we're going to do 100% for the other batch, we're going to do 10 grams times 100%. And we're going to do 10 grams for the 100% weight of fiber. As with all of the woods that we've done here, and actually a lot of dye matter in general, soaking the dye matter before you use it is going to help loosen it up. So we are going to take that 1 gram and that 10 gram of logwood. We're going to put them into 2 separate dye pots, cover them with water, and just let them sit. We can let them sit for an hour. We can let them sit overnight. Longer the better sometimes. So if you've got time, use it. Then we're going to step through an exhaust extraction, just like we did with the Osage orange a few weeks ago. And that will allow us to extract as much as possible from these chips. Although I do want to save a little bit at the very end to put them together with the other chips I've saved to create a echo print. Kind of fun idea for the future, maybe even next week. Stick around, we'll see what happens. So let's start measuring the logwood and get that soaking. Logwood chips. Logwood is a tree from Central and South America into the Caribbean area, as well as over in India and some other areas of the Asian continent. I buy most of my non-foraged dye matter from Botanical Colors. Anyway, logwood chips, very light. You can see they're already shaved up like sawdust, like the Osage. And for my 10%, I just need 1 gram. 1 gram isn't very much. You can see very little, but this logwood is pretty potent. And now 100% weight of fiber for 10 grams. We will need 10 grams of the chips. There we go, 10 grams. Perfect, let's get it soaking. All right, chips are weighed and we're gonna start soaking them. Now, next step, as with everything, is needing to mordant the fiber. I already did that, so I'm not gonna walk you through the process. There are many, many videos where I did just that. However, I have some silk and wool in this batch, so I did those in an alum mordant with some cream of tartar, and there's at least one video about that if you look back through the library. I treated those differently than I did with the cotton, which is a combination of things. I did an aluminum acetate and I did some soy milk binder for those. So everything's been done. So we'll just let that logwood soak and then get to making our 2 pots of dye. Well, it's not hard to see which one is the 10% and which is the 100%. They've only been sitting here for, a few minutes, but a lot more colors coming out there. Overnight soak. Here is the 10%. Lots of color came out in the evening. And of course, here is the 100%. Looks like it's time for us to start heating this up. Now, since we're going to be working on an extraction process that involves exhaust, meaning we're going to be using the same logwood chips a few times in different dye baths in order to pull as much color as possible, I'm not going to add any water to the 100% because I would have a huge volume at the end of that. But for the 10%, I've decided I'm only going to do one extraction. That's the first extraction. And so I am going to add water to that dye pot so that I have enough volume of water to accommodate the fiber so that they can loosely move around. I'm going to save those chips for next week's video, or hopefully next week's video, which will be using all of the exhaust chips that we've worked on this month in an echo print. So I do want to have a little bit of juice left in those chips. So we will simply practice the exhaust extraction with the 100% and add some water to that 10% dye pot so that we will have enough dye for our fiber. So this is the fourth extraction from the 100%. And here is the compilation of all of those dyes. Gosh, it looks almost black in there, doesn't it? Let's see. Yeah, really rich. What I love about this dye is that it looks red or burgundy, and then it dyes fiber purple. Such a cool part. Anyway, I'm going to put this last extraction in to here, and then I am saving all of the shavings here. Gonna let them dry out and use them next week. I could probably get more color from these, but I want to save them and use them for echo dyeing. I've got the 10% right there with the fiber inside soaking. I've kept them on a nice simmering heat for about an hour, and then I turned off the heat. I'm just gonna let them cool in the pot. I love doing that. Just feel like it gives extra time for the dye to adhere to the fiber. I have a huge pot of the 100% logwood. This is why I only extract with a little bit of water, although obviously more water than I needed. But that's okay, because I'm gonna save this dye just the way that I always do, bottle it up, and keep it stored in a cool place for future dyes, future exhaust dyes. So that's okay. But now it's time to put this pot back on the stove and add in the damp fiber so that we can heat it for an hour, let it cool in the pot, and then compare them 100% to the 10% and see where we get. And then we'll start to shift. I just pulled out the 10% versus the 100% to wash out, and I was shocked actually by the colors that came out of the 100%. I'm going to show them to you. I have to say two things. One is that never make decisions with wet fiber. It's just a curiosity to see it, but wait till things dry. But also, I thought perhaps I contaminated my dye. I do have a pot that I use specifically for anything that I'm using for iron, and a dye pot. Not that I heat iron very often, but if I have fiber that somehow is going to be around iron, I will use that pot. The color was unexpected, and I wondered, oh my gosh, I used my iron pot, but I didn't. So I don't know, could have been contaminated from what I did last week. I don't know, but let me show you the colors and then we'll let them dry. And then we will shift the protein fibers using soda ash. See where that goes. So this is the 10%. Got some really pretty sort of violet blues in there. We'll see how that dries out. You can see the protein's always so much darker than the cellulose fibers. But the curious part for me was this. So this is the 100%, and some of these colors to me are super gray. Now they might dry looking more blue or purple. Maybe, I mean, it's supposed to be purple, but I saw some of these colors, like, look at this color. I mean, that is just, that's just gray. And I thought, dang, could that be iron? But I'm just gonna let them dry and then we'll go from there. I've cut up all my samples, both 10% and 100%, into smaller pieces so that I can test two things. One is I have read that soda ash will darken protein fibers. So I'm going to make the 100% dye into an alkaline dye by adding a little bit of soda ash. And then we'll test out both the 10% dyed and the 100% dyed protein fibers, which are silk and wool. Then we will do an iron shift on all of them, including the cellulose pieces and both the 10% and the 100%. I wasn't gonna do it, but then I decided I had enough fiber to go ahead and cut up a bunch of little pieces and see what happens. Curiosity, you know? And I'm interested to see if we darken the protein fibers with the soda ash. Don't know. Let's see what happens. Now you see me make my homemade soda ash, but because I was using more and more of it, I decided to go ahead and invest in this. And you can find soda ash just as something that's called washing soda. This will last me a really long time, but I can use it to scour my fiber as well. So it kind of plays a double role here. So nothing that I really have to make my homemade. I did make the homemade because at one point I didn't have it, but I always have baking soda, and you can bake baking soda in a low temperature and create soda ash. So I don't need very much of this. And I'm just gonna wing it, to be honest with you. I was gonna try to get approximately like a quarter of a teaspoon. I'm not gonna be very accurate. And I'm gonna put that right into the dye pot. Normally I could put some hot water in and go ahead and dissolve it, but since my dye is still warm, I'm just gonna put it right into the pot. Of course, testing it with litmus paper is another way to kind of decide if you have enough of an alkaline shift. So I'm just gonna put this in, and I can tell you that that's pretty decent. I mean, I at least shifted it up to an 8 or a 9. We'll look at that here. Yeah, oh gosh, actually, you know what? I took that all the way up to a 10. So that's definitely alkaline now. Okay, all the testing is done. And there are so many different variations that I thought it would be best for us to just look at them quickly together, and I'll make some comments about what I see and think, and be curious to see what you think about all of it. So let's start with the wool and silk, since those were shifted by soda ash shift. So you can see here that I have the 10% versus the 100%, and I'm putting them in order of the dye alone here, the shift with the soda ash, and then the shift with the iron. Now my iron water was used previously, so I don't think it was very strong. I don't think there was a huge difference between the shifts of the dye to the iron water. It's maybe a little bit subdued or saddened, as they say, but not a huge difference. There was an interesting change to the fiber with the soda ash. So I thought it might become, I don't know, more purple, but I don't know what that really means. So it has a sort of gray cast to it, and maybe looking at the fibers, it actually lightened them a bit. So is it more purple than this? I don't know, but it definitely had an impact. And the same here with the silk. So you can see that is the soda ash. So it did lighten. This was pretty dark at 100%, and it turned it into this really pretty sort of royal purple. Very, very pretty. And then again, a slight change here from this to this with iron. Another kind of silk, you can see that soda ash there. So, and then I have these pieces. Now, interestingly enough, these all were pre-treated with alum, and these are silk pieces that I always have sort of floating around that use a soy milk binder. And these colors are super gray. They're just gray. I mean, there might be a cast of purple to them, but this was at 10%, this was at 100%, and they're gray. So I don't know what the soy milk and the logwood together do, but absolutely alum is probably the mordant of choice here, whether it's aluminum acetate or aluminum sulfate, aluminum potassium sulfate, to get those purples. Now, let's move over here to cotton, 10% and the 100%. And these two and these two are aluminum. These were actually aluminum sulfate. These were aluminum acetate. Hands down, this is what you want to use for a mordant, because these guys down here are the soy milk versions. And although these have a sort of light purple cast to them, and these are actually the iron, so let's just look at those. These have a light purple cast to them. These are cotton, just cotton and cotton gauze. But I mean, look at that bamboo. It's just gray, and at 100% also gray. And these guys actually, wow, just super gray. And so I think soy milk and logwood have a little bit of a different thing going on, as you can see. And then these are the iron shifts. Accordingly, it just took them a little bit grayer. So that is the result. And I think looking at it, absolutely the takeaway here is that there obviously is a difference between 10% and 100%, but aluminum acetate / aluminum potassium sulfate pretreatment is how I believe you're going to really get those purples. I want to show you one other interesting piece. So this was a piece that I dyed back in January from the kit, the natural dye kit, and it really is purple. And this was with aluminum potassium sulfate pretreatment. So look at the differences in these purples. They're very different shades of purple. So I think it's a really good indicator of how different environments, you can get some pretty big variations. So that's going to wrap it up for the color results. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out about that and go try it out. I really enjoy Logwood. It was the color of royalty because it was so rare and so highly sought after. So it's got some not so friendly history around it. However, it is a really fun dye to play with and to bring about some different kinds of purples into your practice. I hope it brought you some inspiration to go out there and test it out for yourself. All right, that wraps up our 4 different dye sources, all coming from trees and roots for the month of July. Now, I'm very excited because as you've seen over the past couple of weeks, I've been saving the shavings and the roots that I used because you can use all of these for exhaust baths and for other future dye projects. And as you might imagine, they'll be less potent, but I want to use them in an eco dyeing scenario where we're going to design something with those leftover shavings and do a bundle dye with them. So I hope you'll join me next week as we look at reusing all of these amazing wood and root chips from the month of July and create something super pretty with those colors. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Friday. That brought about pinks and that brought about subtle pinks and that brought